Well, welcome everyone to Tech Canada's Deeper Insights webinar series. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Tech Canada, and I'm very happy to host this latest installment in our series. Our Deeper Websites webinar series is designed to equip business leaders with the latest insights to strategically approach the complex issues and business uncertainty that surrounds us. Deeper Insights features industry experts, thought leaders on key subjects, to allow our leaders to accelerate their ability to grow both strategically and overcome challenges much quicker. In addition to expert thought leadership, all webinars feature a Q&A session, which we'll have at the very end of this session, providing our viewers the opportunity to gain insight from the industry leaders we feature and implement these real solutions. Our guest today is Lisa Shepherd. Lisa is the president at Mezzanine Growth and a very well-respected Tech Canada speaker. She's been working with complex B2B companies for over 20 years and has helped over 250 B2B leaders create sustainable sales engines within their companies. Today, Lisa will discuss how sales and marketing teams have faced dramatic and unexpected changes. From trade shows to sales calls, business as normal was no longer a possibility for the majority of the past 2 years. Companies responded by making dramatic shifts in how they sell. From Zoom calls to webinars, sales and marketing departments adopted new behaviors and adapted to a new reality. The question now is, which of those changes will stick? To discuss this and even more, I'm pleased now to introduce and hand the screen over to Lisa Shepherd. Take it away, Lisa.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the kind introduction, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. So our topic today is business development in the new normal. I'm going to keep this very casual and interactive and happy to take any questions that you have as we go through. Mark gave us a good introduction of what we're going to cover today. And so my key points for you are, we'll be looking at how business development is changing post-pandemic, what the social and technological forces that are driving the change are, and some new sales and marketing tools your business can use to keep pace and to win in this new environment. Let's start with some context. And here are 5 areas for you to keep in your back pocket of what's changing in buying behavior, in B2B in particular. Mark mentioned my business operates in B2B, specifically generally complex sales, companies with intellectual property. And so that's what I'm going to be covering today. And I'll also use the term business development fairly interchangeably with sales and marketing. So I'm talking about anything that has to do with revenue production. So here are some stats that really do tell us the situation we're operating in now. So the first is that 50 to 90% of the buying process is now completed digitally. This trend has been happening for a long time. At least 10 years ago, we started to see buyers do more of their initial research online. That's why we've seen the explosion of content in these last few years. Things like white papers, blogs, webinars, even social media. It's because people are online trying to figure out solutions to whatever work problem they're dealing with. Some industries adopted online content at the beginning of this trend. Companies in the technology space, for example, they knew that their buyers were online looking for answers earlier. Others were slower to adopt, for example, engineering services, anything that was complex or customized solutions. But even those have started to shift, and buyers are now conducting early stages of their buying process online. The second stat for you is that 75% of B2B buyers are using social media to research vendors. Similar story here in terms of adoption. 10 years ago, if you had asked if social media was a relevant tool, an important tool for B2B companies to be using, the answer was generally no. But now, absolutely, B2B companies need to be using social media. LinkedIn is the big player here. The others, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they can play a role depending on the industry and the buyer profile. I'll come back to that as we go through the presentation today. interesting stat here, 74% of buyers choose the first sales rep who adds value. So we know that buyers are doing a lot of their initial research online, learning about potential vendors and companies to work with. They'll reach out to a few. And when it comes to sales reps, they'll do business with the sales rep who's been the first to really help them understand and come up with the right solution for their situation. Next stat, 90% of decision makers say they never respond to cold calling. So for anyone who's doing a lot of cold calling, it can have a role in the sales process, but it doesn't work as well as it did many years ago. And the last stat for you is 5.4 people are involved in every B2B buying decision. This number's been going up every year. I think we can all relate to the fact that buying is getting more complex. There are more buyers to cover off in your selling process. You might be selling to an engineer, but you also need to cover off the CFO. You may need to cover off operations people. You may need to cover off sales and marketing. So there are a lot of buyers involved in every buying decision. So that's the context to what's happening in sales and marketing and business development. And we want to understand why those changes have occurred because it helps us see the underlying reasons and the major trends that will continue to affect us. If we understand why those changes have occurred, it allows us to project into the future. And the three big trends we're going to talk about today are a shift in communication preferences, the consumerization of B2B. Every B2B buyer that you're talking to is also a consumer in their personal life. And we are all learning from Uber, Starbucks, Amazon, Apple. We're all adopting those consumer trends and expectations in our B2B roles as well. And the last one is very new and emerging. Work patterns and expectations are changing. Through the pandemic and what we've seen in the last year is this great resignation or a great shift. We're definitely seeing it in sales and marketing with people having different expectations for where they work, how they work, and when they work. And this is affecting companies pretty significantly. So as we talk about these trends, B2B selling is based on a logical framework, or at least it has been based on this wonderful, clean and linear process where we think a customer identifies a problem, they explore possible solutions, they define their requirements, and they negotiate a deal. Most of our sales teams and our sales processes have been set up this way. What we're finding now is that reality is far messier. It probably always was quite a bit messier than that nice, clean process, but the pandemic has made it even more so. This line has lots of back and forth and up and down. There's lots of roadblocks and changes that can happen on the buyer's journey. Things like the CFO can get changed and that can change requirements. IT might be unable to integrate a solution. Maybe there's a legal flag with your offering. So all of these problems are affecting how buyers are buying and how deals are getting done. Gartner has done some very good research on what's happening with sales enablement, in particular in B2B. And they have produced some great reports recently about how buyers are spending their time and how challenging it is for buyers to buy. And one of the findings is that buyers are spending a tiny amount of their purchasing process time actually with sellers. So this is how buyers are spending their time. I'm going to go reverse clockwise. So they're spending 27% of their time independently researching online. So a little better than a quarter of their time, they're online looking at solutions, looking at vendors. 22% of their time is meeting with their internal buying group. So this is their colleagues and the stakeholders in whatever solution is going to be bought. 18% of their time they're researching independently offline. This might be phone calls to colleagues or to others, other vendors that they could be working with. 16% is unquantified, and then 17% is here, meeting with potential suppliers. So only 17% of their buying process is actually spent meeting with potential suppliers. And if they are talking with two or three, excuse me, two or three suppliers, that means if we take 17% and divide it by 3, each individual supplier, each individual salesperson has less than 6% of that buyer's time. That's a really important consideration for us in structuring sales teams. Basically, our salespeople have very little time with a buyer. They have very little ability to influence the buyer's decision. Something to keep in mind as you think of how you're encouraging salespeople to help buyers make their buying decisions. And of course, in B2B, we love to think that buyers prefer reps and that we absolutely need, our reps are fantastic and buyers want to buy through a rep. Well, we might not be correct on that. It depends a little bit on our age group. So this is also Gartner research based on a study with almost 1,000 B2B buyers. And the outcome here is that B2B buyers prefer a rep-free experience. If you're in the boomer category, likely to be less than a third of baby boomers are preferring that rep-free experience. If you're in Gen X, which is the next cohort, the 40-something, early 50-somethings, 43% say they prefer a rep-free experience. Millennials, this is the interesting group here. We've seen millennials come into decision-making roles in B2B companies in the last 5 years. These are the 30-somethings and the early 40-somethings. 54% of millennials say they prefer a rep-free experience, so more than half. This has big implications for how we are buying and selling in the next 10 years in B2B in particular. All right, so I've covered a lot of trends there. What does it mean for B2B buying and selling? So the first implication is that the B2B buying process is longer and more complicated than it's ever been. More people are involved, there's more questions to be answered, and there's more pivots along the way. Buyers are gathering more information before they ever talk with a sales rep. It's harder for reps to get in and to influence the buying process. If you were trained in spin selling or influence selling and have read any of the classic sales guidance from the 90s and the early part of the millennium, we always wanted to influence the buying process. What's happened in the last 5 to 10 years is it's much harder for salespeople to influence that buying process because buyers are so autonomous now. And B2B buyers are also consumers. They increasingly expect and want to self-serve. So what it means for businesses, three implications and 3 ways that you can bring new tools and technologies into your company, new ways of doing your sales and marketing. So the first is digital marketing. It's a major player now in B2B revenue. Digital marketing is allowing B2B companies to cover off a lot of important bases that once were handled by sales. So the first is raising awareness. Of course, if we want to be on the radar to buyers, we need to be known out in the market. So raising awareness is the first thing that digital marketing does. It allows B2B companies to establish their credibility. Credibility is so important. It's critical in B2B sales. Without credibility, companies are never very successful in sales in B2B. They need to have credibility. They need to be trusted by buyers. It allows us to educate prospective buyers. We can inform them and help them as they're doing their due diligence to understand pros and cons of different solutions, why our company might be a good bet for them. Digital marketing also allows us to be there when our salespeople can't be. So the reality is salespeople are people. They can be available to customers for a certain amount of time. Digital marketing allows us to be online 24/7 around the world. Digital marketing is also it's supporting sales teams in progressing deals. Things like case studies are really helpful tools for B2B sales teams. And increasingly what we're seeing is digital marketing is allowing the start of the sales process. Depending on what your business sells and what you offer, it isn't necessarily going to complete or seal a deal, but digital marketing will allow you to open the door to attract new customers and prospects to generate the leads that you can then hand over to your sales team. So that's number one. Number two consideration of these changes is that salespeople are now only one channel to customers. They are not the only channel in B2B. Increasingly, tools like online calculators, simulators, and e-commerce are being used in B2B. They are fantastic early stage tools that help you attract prospects to your sales pipeline, so that top of funnel. They will help your sales team progress deals and conversations, help support that trusted advisor role that your sales team wants to be. And in some cases, it will allow you to convert prospects into deals. Not every customer. If you are selling a complex solution, something that is customized, you will always need a salesperson. But if you are selling a product or something that's fairly commoditized, e-commerce is increasingly valuable. We're seeing more and more companies launch e-commerce sites and find that it improves their cost to serve for reordering for customers that they already have. And again, for that millennial cohort who's looking for a rep-free experience, it means that you are serving the customer in the way that they want to be served. So all of this allows customers to find you, talk with you, and buy from you in the way they want to buy. This is the most important thing for B2B companies in the next 5 to 10 years to make sure they're thinking about in a long-term way. And number three, in the major trends and shifts that we're seeing in B2B buying and selling. The goal here is to make buying and selling easier. And there's two reasons for this, and it's two sides of the same coin. One is we need to attract talent and we need to attract customers. So on the selling side, you may be surprised I'm starting here, but we are seeing so many challenges in recruiting salespeople and marketers into B2B companies. And so as business leaders, we need to be thinking about what are we doing to support salespeople in being successful in their role. So having demand and lead generation in place in the business is very important to salespeople right now. If your company does not have solid, robust demand generation and lead generation such that prospects are being attracted to the business and they're coming in with some knowledge of what you sell and what you offer, it makes the salesperson's job very difficult without that. So putting demand and lead generation in place means you will have a healthier prospecting database. You'll have more top of funnel. Your salespeople will have more to work with, which is very important because salespeople are expensive. We want their time to be used well. And it means you'll be able to attract salespeople because they will see, this is a company that has its marketing act together, and that will help me be successful in securing new customers for the business. So that's critical, having demand and lead generation in place. The second, have technology in place to streamline your communications and your tracking. Without a great CRM system, without marketing automation, it is too difficult for salespeople to keep track of who they've spoken with, what they've talked about, what that customer is knowledgeable about, what that customer has been researching for. So having both marketing automation, something like HubSpot, and a CRM system so that you can see what is converting from top of funnel. How did those prospects come into your pipeline? And what kind of timeline did they convert on? All of these things are critical in this new post-pandemic buying and selling era. What we've seen, I've alluded to this, good sales reps are less likely to join companies who do not have digital demand and lead generation in place because they know that they are less likely to succeed. And we're seeing that play out in a number of the B2B companies that we work with. Now, on the buying side, which is where we all understand digital marketing's job is to attract prospects and customers. One way that companies can make it easier for buyers to buy is by looking at some of their more strategic elements like deal structures, financial terms, pilot projects, and a smooth user experience on the website, on the buying tool, if they are using e-commerce. Question to ask yourself would be, how can you de-risk the buying decision for the customer? This is really an overlooked competitive advantage right now. We talked about how many buyers are involved in the buying decision now. 5.4 is the average. In some cases, it's lower, in some it's higher. But every buyer is dealing with risk and the perception of, am I doing a deal with the right kind of company? So the more that you can de-risk the buying decision for the customer, the easier you can make it for them to engage, the more successful your salespeople and your funnel will be. We've had a question come in, so I'm going to have a look at this, and I may answer it now, and I may answer it as we go through. So what business development advice can you suggest to a smaller professional services provider with impeccable credentials, but competing against the big 5 audit and consulting firms? Fantastic question. This is such a challenge for professional services. I'm going to have a few tips on this one. There's one tactic in particular I'm going to talk about in the next section, and I will make sure to come back to this question then. All right, so we've covered off the big areas, the big trends. I'm going to shift gears now, and we're going to talk tactically. So we're getting to nitty gritty now. We're going to cover 6 ways that business development is changing after the pandemic. And we're going to cover marketing budget and spend, what's going on in advertising in B2B, lots of change here. We're going to talk about sales process. Similar to some of the trends we've just been talking about, what's happening with sales process, sales enablement, how are companies structuring their sales teams, trade shows and events. Prior to the pandemic, trade shows were still the mainstay of B2B marketing budgets. Sure, they were changing. There was more money being spent in digital and in content, but trade shows still took a huge portion of budgets for B2B marketing departments. And of course, all of that was shut down in March of 2020. So we're seeing some return to trade shows and events. Marketing tools and tactics. I've got 3 tools and technologies for you to consider using in your situation. This is the one where I'm going to talk about business development for professional services. E-commerce. Should you launch e-commerce? What are some of the considerations for, is it the right time for your B2B company to look at e-commerce? And last but not least, people and culture. What has changed through the pandemic, both on the employee side and customer expectations side? So with that, we'll start with advertising. So a couple of charts for us to look at. Advertising spend is way up through the pandemic. The data that you see here is HubSpot has done some good through the pandemic analysis. They've got 100,000 companies that this data is pulled from all around the world. So that excuse me,
Half a sec.
gives us a good, robust data to work with. And what we're seeing is that across all companies, advertising spend is up 75% from pre-pandemic. The data starts roughly in July of 2020. These numbers were pretty low. And what you'll see, 0 was the baseline number of 2020. So what you can see is these numbers are up around 75. They've been up around 75%. Manufacturing is what we've pulled to represent B2B. There's a number of different industries represented. If you Google HubSpot industry data, you can see these charts and graphs in the different regions. You can look at your own industry. So what we've seen in manufacturing, which is a good representation for B2B, is that spend is up somewhere between 40 and 60%. And this is over the last 6 months. Excuse me.
Hey, Lisa, we had a question come in through our LinkedIn.
Mark,
Live.
I can't hear you if you're talking.
Oh, no.
No, there you are. I can hear you now.
There we go. Perfect. We had a question come in through our LinkedIn Live connection, Lisa, that's kind of interesting and back dealing with the whole deal, how to deal with millennials as fewer of them want direct input from or direct connection with a sales rep. And it's in a commodity driven environment, or sorry, a non-commodity service sell. How do you best connect with them, given that rep involvement is required to qualify customers and close deals? Any thoughts off the
Yeah, I think this is probably the hottest topic and issue for most of the B2B businesses that historically have always secured deals through salespeople, and they have a customized solution and a complex solution where the reality is you are not buying this through e-commerce. However, what I will say is what we see working well is try to start the sales process digitally, non-rep involvement. Use tools like ROI calculators, simulators, quizzes of all things. If it's millennial, it can be anybody. We'll say it's that cohort who prefers not to reach out, not to talk with sales at the very beginning of their due diligence. I think most of us can relate to this, right? I'm figuring things out. I don't want to talk to anybody yet. I don't need a sales pitch. I need to do my own learning, and then I will reach out to somebody. The tools, the digital tools and the interactive tools that allow us to learn and develop our own knowledge, those are the ones that get buyers engaged. I've done this. I'm sure you've done this, Mark, where, okay, there's a really good white paper, or there's a tool, or there's a quiz. I want to take it. I go through it. Oh, and lo and behold, for me to get my answers, I'm going to need to provide my name, maybe my phone number, and my email address. If it's valuable, I will do that. If it's not feeling valuable, I'll walk away, like all of us do. We don't love the gated content, but if something is useful, so we are finding those really powerful ROI calculators is probably the best one right now, where if you are selling something that is a complex solution, if you can build an ROI calculator with a number of parameters and a number of questions that your customer base would need to answer, you'll get great lead generation out of that.
That interest and that intent from a digital platform that drives them to want to talk to a sales rep. Right.
Yes. And then, we have their email address, if nothing else at that point, and we can start nurturing and start building. The reality is, some of those folks still don't want to hear from us, but some of them do. And the more useful we are to them, the more likely they are to engage with us. Companies do have to figure out what is the right point to reach out. Again, there is data that says the sooner you reach out, that a sales rep reaches out after someone downloads a white paper, the more successful that call will be. I've seen data that says, reach out within 10 minutes. Well, I've also seen that really go sideways for companies, whoa, leave me alone. So there is a careful balancing act. One of the most important things for B2B companies is to baseline their own performance and to do their own assessments. I always get asked about benchmarks, what should we do? And it's, well, Here's what other companies do, but they are never going to be exactly your customer base, exactly what you sell, exactly your price point. So there's never a, unfortunately, it's very difficult in B2B to have the exact benchmark. What's safer for companies to do is to baseline. So get their own data, baseline their own performance, do it on a quarterly basis, and make adjustments on that quarterly basis. They learn and they improve performance that way.
Love it. Thanks, Lisa.
All right. So key point here, advertising spend has gone up a lot. What I want you to take from this is the organic versus paid analysis. So organic, which is, as B2B companies, we develop our own content. We have our own email list. We send out information to our own network. It was all very organic. Trade associations, where we used to do advertising, print advertising, if we're going back 10, 20 years, we did print ads and we did exhibit halls at trade shows. There was a period of time where advertising in B2B was a recipe for lack of success. I'll put it that way. I could say wasting money. And so organic was absolutely stronger. This has changed. If we'd had this conversation 5 years ago, I wouldn't be saying this, but in the last 2 to 3 years, industry associations have come a long, long way. They've done an excellent job. They have clean email lists. They have engaged members. If we look at what's happened with Castle and with spam filters, we really need readers of emails to be engaged. And this is where industry associations are delivering value. They've done a better job than individual companies in many cases. I'm using a fairly broad brush to say this. It's not true with 100% of industry associations, but generally speaking, they've come a long way. We've seen really good ROI from paid advertising with associations and media companies. So your industry partners, or your professional associations, LinkedIn as well, webinars. Companies are spending anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 to host a webinar through an industry association. The reason that industry associations can charge those numbers is because they can deliver results. If you don't have your own email list that is really robust and strong, spending money through the third parties is delivering great results. Display advertising also working, email, sponsored content, and social media. It's all worth considering. Google Ads can be an absolute powerhouse for B2B companies if your products and solutions are being searched. So there's somewhat of a commodity element in here. I would not suggest that for the individual who asked the question about professional associations. No, advertising will not work for services companies. So the point here is, if you don't have a strong email list, consider shifting your budget towards 50% advertising spend and 50% leveraging through content, team, and automation. That 50% advertising number would have been so much lower 3 to 5 years ago. It might have been 10 or 20%, but we are really seeing more and more reasons to spend and invest in advertising. Now, there are some rules of thumb for getting your money's worth if you are going to spend on paid advertising. So how to succeed with paid advertising. So the first is to know your numbers and run your numbers. In your business, what is a lead worth in customer lifetime value? In B2B, this is tricky. A customer might do an initial deal with you for $10,000, but they might be a customer for 3 to 10 years. So it's important to think in terms of attracting a new customer who has a high profit margin, high contribution to your business, and will stick around for a number of years is very valuable. It is worth it to spend. I mean, typical numbers in B2B can be anywhere from $500 for a good lead to $5,000, depending on the customer lifetime value. So it's important to know these numbers, even in a back of the envelope way. You don't have to get it to perfection, especially as you're starting, but have a sense of what is a lead worth to our business and how are we going to get ROI. The second, I mentioned earlier, a good CRM, solid follow-up, and nurturing is needed. So as one benchmark, only 18% of webinar leads are sales ready. So lots of people who attend webinars, the majority, over 80%, are not sales ready. They are just gathering information. They're trying to learn. They don't want to hear from you or talk to you. However, in B2B, we know that over time, you have the potential to convert those leads and prospects into customers, but only if you're doing the work to follow up with them and build a relationship with them. Do you have the infrastructure in place in order to do that? And that means marketing automation. And the last point here is brand and infrastructure are multipliers. Lead generation is a very sexy topic in B2B. Everyone wants lead generation. But the reality is that lead generation is only successful when it's combined with brand and infrastructure. So infrastructure will be that good CRM and that nurturing system that I mentioned earlier. Brand is your company's reputation. Are you known? Are you trusted? Are you out in the market? Are you seen? Companies think that if they spend a lot of money on lead generation, they'll generate a lot of leads, which may be true. But if they don't have brand presence and the ability to nurture leads, they will only waste their money by doing a lot of lead generation. So there is a combination of lead generation with brand and infrastructure in your spend. All right, so that was advertising. I'm moving on to the second point now, which is sales process. So B2B buying and selling has gone digital. And we've been talking a bit about this as we've gone through. Look at this chart. So we'll look across the top. So there are a few different ways that B2B buyers interact with their vendors. So one is when they are identifying new suppliers. The second is when they're evaluating the new supplier. So I'm looking for a solution or a vendor. I am now considering which vendor I want to work with. The third is I work with a particular vendor. I'm going to make an order with them. And the last is I'm reordering. I've ordered this product, this service before. I just want to place a new order. And this is how people are preferring to interact. So in person, then remote, and then digital self-serve. So this makes sense. Intuitively, we can guess that less than 1 out of 5 people really feels they need to do an in-person interaction, be it phone or at a counter, to order or reorder. They're much more interested in identifying new suppliers. I shouldn't say much more interested. They are more interested in evaluating new suppliers in person. You can see these huge numbers on remote. And I think all of us have experienced this through the pandemic. All of the Zoom calls, all of the buyer negotiations that we did through the pandemic because we couldn't see our suppliers and our customers. A lot of people have gotten very accustomed to doing Zoom calls. And then we can see where digital self-serve is. That's all I'm going to focus on here for sales process. We're going to come back and talk more about e-commerce and where that fits, as well as some of the tools. All right, events and trade shows. So virtual trade shows were rather a bust. We saw a lot of them happening in the early part of the pandemic, the first year. It was challenging for the industry associations, for any event organizer to try and convert an in-person event to a virtual. The technologies were wonky. Anyway, long story short, not a lot of success on virtual. So I would say don't bother with them. Don't make major investments here. On reconnecting in person, so we are seeing the shows come back certainly in the United States in the last year. We're seeing more in Dubai, in the Middle East, UAE in particular, and increasingly in Europe, not so much in Asia yet. There is pent-up demand to reconnect in person. You can see how companies are starting to travel. I traveled from Toronto to Calgary to Kelowna yesterday, and the lounges in the airports were certainly busier than I've seen. And they had they had the vibe. The vibe was coming back, which was nice. There's been people in the airports, but I would say in the lounges in particular, it felt kind of normal. So if you are looking at trade shows for the year, there is a balancing act for timing. The upside of going to shows and making those investments now is that you can be present when others are not. The downside is there are smaller audiences there. So you might want to be cautious on how heavy your investments are. This is going to evolve over the course of the year. Okay, tools and tactics. 3 tools to consider. So the first one is video. 7 in 10 B2B buyers watch video through their buyer journey. Video has become one of the most commonly used formats for content marketing, stronger than blogs and infographics. And I want to come back to the question about professional services with this particular question. So the magic with professional service is the trust that you can establish and build with your buyer. And historically, we've always done that through in-person, right? You would network, you would have people in your community, you would build those relationships over time. Digital does not allow us to do that in exactly the same way as in person, but video is pretty darn close. I can speak from personal experience on this one, as well as our client base of services companies. When we do video interviews or any video posts on LinkedIn, they get excellent engagement. And I know they allow buyers to feel like they're getting to know the service provider, be it a lawyer, be it an accountant, be it a business consultant or a management consultant. If you can share your expertise through video, it allows you to, yes, educate your buyer, but also share your personality and allow a buyer to feel like they're getting to know you, and you're doing it in a one-to-many way. So 1,000 people may see that video that took you 10 minutes to record. That is my best advice for professional services companies, is to do video in a way that allows you to showcase your expertise, to share it with potential customers, and to share those through YouTube, LinkedIn, primarily through your own email newsletter, through your own website. So video has tons of still untapped potential in B2B. This is going to be the big area, continuing area of growth. Second idea is podcasts. I hope there's some podcast listeners. I'm sure there's some podcast listeners today. The stats there, 39% of men, 36% of women. This is our monthly podcast listeners. So those are really committed podcast listeners. Great way to showcase your expertise. I would say the trick with podcasts is they are not a one and done kind of initiative. They, like most marketing initiatives, they need to be consistently executed in order to be successful. The second comment about podcasts there is really, really important, which is that Google search algorithms are now prioritizing podcasts, video, and images over text. So if you are paying any attention and investing in search engine optimization because you want your company's pages to be found on Google for relevant searches, the more you are doing podcasts, video, and images, the better your results are going to be. And that's often the case with marketing, that there's a derivative effect here. Some of the things you do in marketing are a means to an end. You might do images not because you care so much about getting your images out there, but because they are going to help your content, your other content, and your website rank higher on Google, so searchers can find you. So much of what is happening in marketing, digital marketing now, is about figuring out the algorithm. And this is where experimentation and that baselining becomes so important, because Google will never tell us exactly what goes into the algorithm. We have to figure it out for ourselves. This is equally true with LinkedIn now. So experimentation and having a healthy attitude to experimenting, which means not everything is going to work, really important. Last piece here is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So this is a paid element of LinkedIn. 78% of B2B salespeople engaged in social selling are outselling their peers who are not. We're seeing excellent results out of Sales Navigator and salespeople who are using Navigator. So we could do an entire webinar on Sales Navigator. This is particularly relevant for professional services as well. Two components to this. One is Sales Navigator will help you grow your connections, your number of people that you are connected to. And so call those top of funnel. However, those are not sales ready leads by any stretch of the imagination. Those are just people, they're suspects, really, if I use the old language of sales funnel. But what can happen once those people are connected to you, if you are doing posts on LinkedIn, so if you are doing video posts, if you are commenting on articles, if you are sharing, liking, the people that are connected to your comments, your posts will show up in their feed. Over time, that allows you and that allows them to get a sense of who you are and what you know. And there may come a day when they have a meeting with their colleagues and there's a particular problem that they've decided they need to solve. And lo and behold, it's something that you offer, and a connection or a post that you make shows up on their LinkedIn feed 2 hours later. And they say, aha, that guy, Nathan, I've been connected to him for 3 months and he seems to know what he's talking about. I'm going to reach out and see what he's got to say about this. This is one way to convert our traditional B2B selling into the digital world. All right, e-commerce. Is it time for your business to launch e-commerce? So if we come back to how much companies are doing digitally now, so 48% of businesses are conducting 50 to 74% of all their corporate purchases online. Obviously, this applies for some of the basics like office supplies or phone bills. But there's rapidly growing amounts of purchases, complex purchases or semi-complex purchases that are happening online. Where we've seen this work really well is for businesses that do repeat business. So e-commerce and online ordering is great if you are a company that has high repeat purchases. It does two things for you. Number one, it makes buying easier. We've seen how important that is for customers. So we want to make buying easier for them. On your side, on the cost equation, it reduces your cost to serve. And most companies are doing their business case on the cost to serve. So whatever it's going to cost to launch e-commerce, can you save money in the short term or in the near term, and then position yourself for growth by making it easier for customers to buy? Even big ticket items are selling digitally post-pandemic. This doesn't mean they're self-serve. But what it does mean is customers are finding a vendor online, and then they might be doing a digital demo. A lot of businesses with a complex solution set up a demo room through the pandemic so that they could show tools, technologies to customers that way. I talked to somebody about a month ago who had their company had bought $1 million robot for their factory, and they had never shaken hands with the seller. So everything had been done digitally. So we are seeing that price point go up, and what is saleable through e-commerce and through digital means. And the last point in these 6 tactics that we're covering is the human side of sales and marketing. We've seen a shift through the pandemic. It is okay to be personal. You do not need to always be perfectly buttoned down in a 3-piece suit. We have seen the kids, the pets, the living rooms of our colleagues and our vendors in the last 2 years. It's okay to show your personality. I am sensing a little bit of a shift back to maybe slightly more formal. There's some questions coming about that, but generally speaking, it is okay to be there's an authenticity that comes through for people in showing your personality. When it comes to marketing content, speed and frequency does beat slick and polished. So low production quality is okay. Zoom, we're seeing lots of videos done by Zoom. It's fine. You don't need to spend $10,000 to have a corporate video shot or an interview with one of your sales team. Casual dress is increasingly okay. And marketing is an engine for recruiting. This is where it will be valuable for your marketing and your HR teams to work together. So we're seeing lots of challenges in recruiting right now, recruiting across the board, operations, marketing, sales, admin. Everyone is challenged right now with recruiting. So we are seeing some companies use video, again, that example, and the marketing team is filming, doing videos with some of the current employees on the shop floor. Why did they join the business? What do they see as the future potential? These videos they're great for marketing because they convey what the company is building and what they're working on. But it is also fantastic for the HR department because it is allowing them to show and showcase who their people are. So it's a win internally for those people. And it's allowing them to get the message out to potential recruits in something that is far more compelling than just a job description. So think about where your marketing can do double duty for your HR and your recruiting. So it's attracting talent as well as prospective customers. And on that recruiting point, work norms are definitely changing. Just a few things to keep in mind in recruiting and in thinking about attracting new sales and marketing people to your team. Remote work job postings, this is LinkedIn data. 4% of job postings in 2019 were remote, 100% remote jobs. That moved to 15% last year, and LinkedIn expects it to be up to 25% next year. It's been commented on as the largest societal change since the end of World War II. We're definitely seeing this in marketing, in digital marketing in particular. It's very difficult if you have an expectation that people will come and work on site for your business. It's not a winner for marketers right now. So definitely having the potential to offer hybrid work, 2 days a week in office, or completely remote is definitely attracting candidates more successfully. The right to disconnect laws is changing workers' expectations. So the right to disconnect laws have been passed in Europe, starting in France in 2016, Italy, Spain, Ireland, Belgium, Portugal. Ontario's laws come into effect June 2022 for any companies with 25 plus employees. So check those out to make sure that you are going to be on the right side of that policy. And the 4-day work week. We are seeing more companies experiment with the 4-day work week. It's not for everybody, but this is the environment in which you are attracting sales and marketing talent, and there is a change in expectations. So your recruiting success will be somewhat contingent on what these policies are in your business. All right, we're getting into the last 10 minutes. So I will summarize on the 6 ways. These are our tactics that companies are using to evolve their sales and marketing. So advertising to increase your ROI, and knowing your ROI is point 1. Digitizing part of your sales process. So using tools like online calculators, quizzes, interactive spec forms, anything you can do to bring in potential customers that can then be handed over to your sales team to complete a negotiation and a customization and a deal. Getting back to trade shows, definitely an opportunity. Choose them wisely. Using new marketing methods like video and Sales Navigator, implementing e-commerce, and showcasing your personality and adapting your work norms to meet changing expectations. And here's your to-do list out of today's webinar. Which one tool or method will you explore and make a specific action plan for? So of these 6 that we just covered, is there one thing that speaks most to your business and that you want to not just evaluate, but to evaluate and then implement and experiment with? Hello again, Mark. Any questions?
Lovely. I do have one question that's come in that I think is really quick, compelling, especially given the change and the advancement, I guess, of digital marketing. And then as that relates to sales. So how has the persona of a salesperson changed in the last couple of years? And what should people be looking for in salespeople now?
Such a good question. So this will depend. I mean, every company is going to be different, but I'll comment on some of the things we're seeing. Let's see, where do I start? Okay, clearly we are seeing more sales enablement or business development rep roles. This is your in-house rather than your field sales rep. This is going to be somebody newer in their career, under the age of 30, probably under 30, might be a first sales role for them. These are the people who would be handling the inbound leads. So your marketing's doing the heavy lifting to bring in leads, and then your BDR will be doing outreach to qualify those leads before they're going to field sales or to your account executives. We see a lot of different structures for those teams. Maybe the most successful I've seen is 2 BDRs per account executive. That allows people to really develop relationships. It's not the only way to do it. Again, this will depend on what a company is selling, what makes the most sense. Let's see, what else can I comment on? Have you got any other, have you seen anything, Mark? I'm going to throw this one back to you.
Yeah, no, I love it, Lisa, and certainly have. You know, the relationship sales was the talk of the town for over a decade, and I think it's still there. Though I think, you know, especially given your insights here today, being able to leverage the digital tools that are at the salesperson's disposal is crucial for them to be successful. So it's not just based on them having a personal relationship now with customers, particularly in a B2B market. That's still important, but also being able to leverage the tools that are available to them and being tech savvy to an extent, right?
Yes, actually, that's a very important point. Having salespeople who either know the technology that you use or have had experience with, be it Salesforce, excuse me, HubSpot, just one of the tools makes it a lot easier to implement. I will comment on the 2 BDR idea. I see a lot of companies who will hire 2 salespeople at the same time or roughly at the same time for a few reasons. One is they sort of expect one of them not to succeed. And so if they only hire one, they're left high and dry 6 months down the road. The other reason is that they say there's more likelihood of success with 2 hires because those 2 people will both compete with each other, but also potentially commiserate with each other of what are they learning, what's working, what's not. If they are similar profiles in terms of age and stage, it's really helpful to have that buddy. So I get that. And again, this is, talking about BDRs who are at the earlier stages of their career. It's hard for B2B companies. If they've got a small sales team, they don't need to have 50 sales reps. They've got, 1 through 6 salespeople. It is really tough on this. And that is where we are seeing digital marketing matter, because if digital marketing can do the heavy lifting, can do that initial engagement, prospecting, education, it then positions a field sales rep or an account exec to make a phone call that will be more successful and the buyer will be receptive. It won't be a waste of time. But companies really do need to have their nurturing, to have their automation, to have all of that work in place in order to make sure, because we know, salespeople hate it when marketing give over leads to them that are not sales ready. This is not a new conversation. So that's those are some of the tricks of the trade that I've seen lately.
Love it. Thanks, Lisa.
And I'll end on just a few additional resources. So one is, if your company has historically done a lot of excuse me, a lot of trade shows and you're looking to shift into digital marketing, there's a white paper on Mezzanine's website, 5 lessons for working with media partners, how to make sure that you're negotiating good deals. What are the tips for success and efficiency? I mentioned some of the prices of the costs for webinars lately. you really have to have your game about you in order to be successful when you're, excuse me, when you're spending your money. If you're interested in launching a podcast, I did an interview with an amazing marketing leader who launched a podcast last year to great success, did it on a shoestring too. So she's got lots of great tips there. And if you're interested in using any tactics from the business to consumer world, this is Crossing Over is a white paper that has all the tactics that you can use in your B2B business. And my address, email address is there. Happy to answer any specific questions that you might have. Thanks to everyone.
And thank you so much, Lisa. So many great insights and so many great thoughts that I'm sure people have taken away from this conversation. It's been a whirlwind of great insights that you provided us. So thanks. You know, one of the things that hit me the biggest was that over 75% of B2B buyers are leveraging digital media, particularly social media, in their buying journey. So to be relevant and to be discovered, you have to have a solid and well-designed digital marketing strategy to be out there and to continue the growth of your business.
Yes. And really, the easiest place to start is LinkedIn. In B2B, that is the best place to start.
Right on. Thanks so much, Lisa. A reminder to everybody who's watching too that this webinar has been recorded and it's available on our website at tech-canada. That's TEC-Canada.com. It's also on our YouTube channel. It'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel where you'll find over 800 other videos supporting your journey as a leader. And I'd like to speak to Lisa directly to dig in deeper. She's provided her details just a couple of minutes ago. A reminder that it's lisa@mezzaninegrowth.com. And finally, if you'd like any more insights on tech, please visit our website and reach out to talk to any one of our professionals. Thanks again for joining us. And thanks again to you, Lisa. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark.
You bet. Take care.